Looking at the Mount of Olives from a distance, the first thing that everyone notices is the massive number of graves. Then they notice the spire at the top of the Mount of Olives. Now, if you look at the Mount of Olives from the air, you will see it is just to the east of the Temple Mount. But if we go in more specifically, this is where the summit is. And what most people don't realize is there's an observation area, not at the summit, but a little bit further south. That observation site is located here as we face the Mount of Olives. Now let's go to that observation site and stand there and look back at the Temple Mount area. That's what it looks like. We're going to be talking more about the Temple Mount later, but first, let's talk about the graves. When people see the graves, they think, oh my, are there coffins sitting on top of the graves? No. You see, in Jewish tradition, the bodies are put in cloth under the ground so that they can decompose and go back to nature, going back to the dust, if you will. Here we have a view of these markers, and you can see them in detail. There's thousands and thousands of them on this hillside. So we were standing right about here in that last shot. Let's go back and look at that shot again. All right, now we're going to go and stand here and look down towards the bottom of the valley. So we look down, and there are still more graves as we head down to the bottom of the valley. That valley used to be deeper thousands of years ago. Much of it is filled in. As we look again this time, notice how much lower we are than the Temple Mount. The size of Mount of Olives is really deceiving. It's huge. Look at all that white area. That's all graves, and not just on the west side, but on the south side and east side as well. It's just a very large area. As we come back and look at the Temple Mount again from the Mount of Olives observation point, notice that you're not viewing the Temple Mount directly from the side. You're actually seeing it a little bit from the south. At the south end of the Temple Mount is the Dung Gate, where you have the best access to the western wall. Where would the western wall be? It would be basically just over those trees, just on the other side of those trees. It would be the retaining wall that we see on the east here, but over on the west side. Now, as we look at the south side of the Temple Mount, there's actually a path that allows you to walk from the Dung Gate around towards the east side. You can see a bit of that path in this shot. Let's move in and take a little bit closer look. Just below the retaining wall is, there's a road down there, as you can see with the car, but there is a path. I know on some of these shots you can see people walking along the path. What are they walking through? They're walking through another graveyard. The graves on that side of the Temple Mount are Arab graves, and you see it extends all along the Kidron Valley there next to the Temple Mount. So this is a close-up, and you can definitely see people walking in this particular shot. At the top of this picture is the Golden Gate, also called the Gate of Mercy. It would be the Eastern Gate, the gate in which the Messiah will one day come through. There is controversy surrounding this gate in terms of is this the actual structure from some 2,000 years ago. I'm not well enough versed on this to give an informed opinion. I do believe that this gate will be opened one day for the Messiah. Whether that happens supernaturally or is done by the Jews, not sure. But it is a beautiful marker. It is a continual reminder that Jerusalem is not just about the past, it is about the future as well. As we go back to the main shot here, we can see the Golden Gate along the retaining wall. And I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but it is not exactly lined up with the Dome of the Rock. Now this is interesting because you would expect that the gate would somehow line up with the ancient temple. Well, we know the Dome of the Rock is built on the site of the second temple, but was that the site of the first temple? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back out to the road, and we're going to walk up the street to the north and see if we can position ourselves directly opposite this Golden Gate. We're going to have to walk past that large house up by the curve in the road there, the one with the giant Israeli flag. Let me stop quickly and tell you a story about that house. Basically, that house is one of, or probably the first Jewish-owned home on the Mount of Olives. Now, this Mount of Olives has been in East Jerusalem, and it's been owned by Arabs for centuries. This particular Jew was able to convince a Palestinian, an Arab, to sell his home. Now, this does happen in East Jerusalem from time to time. What happens is that a Palestinian, when they feel like they were going to leave Israel, move to some other location, another country, they will look to sell their home. And the Jews will pay much more than the market price in order to get anything in East Jerusalem. And so this particular Palestinian agreed to terms secretly, and the transaction was made. Unfortunately, in this particular case, the Palestinian was not able to get out of the country fast enough, and he was murdered by Palestinian terrorists to try to put all other Palestinians on notice that they should not be selling their homes to Jews. Well, having sold the home, when the Jews moved in, they've decided to make a strong statement of Israel on the Mount of Olives in this place. And there is police guard below the house. It's amazing. The police are standing right underneath this home to guard it. So when we come back, we're going to walk north until we are exactly lined up with the East Gate, the Golden Gate, the Gate of Mercy. And let's see what we see. So, hope you stick around, come back for the next segment, and until then, this is Bob Waddell from Root Source saying Shalom.